Okay, so this is how you could build some larger forms with coils or bands. So first I'm going to demonstrate construction with coils. So coils are the most versatile way of building. You can push them into any shape you like. They can turn sharp corners or help you move clay inward at very steep angles, and they're very flexible. So we're going to see some videos of some people making some large scale coils. You might work with something that's several inches thick, and then use it in combination with pinching or even throwing and then paddling. The Korean ongi potters will build with large coils, as will the Peruvian potters, and we'll look at a couple of videos of them constructing. So I've started with some coils that I've made on an extruder, and I just pile them up on a board like this. Now I recommend that you put them on a piece of plastic and then put your coils down and then wrap the plastic all the way over. You don't want to have to remake your coils. It's an incredible waste of clay that would all need to be recycled. And if you can get your clay to just the right stiffness, you can actually build fairly quickly. So coiling is going to be the best way to connect the clay to ensure that you don't have any cracks. The clay is vulnerable in the sense that it's weakest where there are connections. I'm going to move the video a little bit here so you can see the whole form. So I am actually building a base for a large lamp that I've made. So I made a vessel that's about 2 feet high, and I want it to be a floor lamp. So I was going to use a metal base, but I think I'm going to build this up here out of clay, and I'm going to kind of bring it in and then bring it up, and then I'm going to attach them with some threaded rod, and I'll show you part of that process as I go. And then I'm also going to build another large piece using bands that I'll construct in the studio so that you can watch me work. And I'll make a video of that too. So in this piece here, I think I'm going to build it without a base. You can see my plaster bat here on the floor, and you're welcome to build a form that doesn't have a base. Often when we fire these forms, if they're large scale, we'll put them on a bed of sand or on a slab that will help them shrink with the pot, because you don't want it to crack, and that will help reduce the cracking, kind of ensure evenness in the drying and shrinking in the firing process. So we're going to use a clay that has a fair amount of grog for large scale work. For smaller scale work, it's not as critical. Our regular stoneware will be just fine, and it may as well be fine for larger scale construction, but it's I believe it's a little more forgiving, easier to work with a clay that has a little more tooth. But the biggest thing you're going to be learning in this assignment, if you decide to build a little bit larger, is when can you add more clay without the wall beginning to lose its shape underneath. So you want to make sure that the clay is stiff enough that you're not going to deform your piece. I've had students be so ambitious and work so quickly that their forms just keep getting wider and wider and wider, and what starts off with a base like this just flattens out, and that becomes weak. And I would joke with them saying, you need to make another form or 2 more so that you can't work too quickly on one. You have to wait. So learning about timing is a big part of this project here. All right, what I do is I score the base where I'm going to attach my coils. And I've already put down 2 layers, and now I'm on my 3rd coil. And I really just kind of score with my toothed rib. I like the flat part of it so I can push the clay aside a little bit, and I get a little bit of a kind of a little edge on my coil, and that gives me a little bit of extra clay that I can work into the coil as I go. And then I'm going to kind of pinch the clay down. So you can see here as I pinch, I'm attaching the clay. So you won't really be able to see my thumb going down. I can try to come around here so you can see as I go. So I pinch the clay kind of down and around. I'm trying to be economical with it. It looks like my coils are not actually lining up. As I twist it, I'm losing my score marks. I did kind of want my score marks to work together. And if I just wet my scoring tool and just add a little bit of water here, it adds a little bit of slurry here. I'm going to try to make up some stick-up slip this weekend for you all, and that is a kind of slip that helps ensure that the clay will adhere. It's made with less water, and it has a little flux in it, so it'll help it really attach the bits of clay that you add together without cracking. So I have to go around on the outside here, and as I attach it, it's kind of stretching a little bit, so I want to do it gradually so that the clay, as it stretches, will still stay going inward, because I want my form to go inward. All right. There will be moments when I'll want it to go outward, and I'll kind of attach it toward the outside and pinch it in that direction. I'm trying to be very even with how I attach it all the way around, and I can just break it and attach it. I made it a little bit small there so I can just fill that clay in here with a little bit of extra, and I'm careful not to trap any air, so that's important. So here I have a little gap with some air on this side, and I think it could use a little bit of extra clay to be more even, and I'll just add some here. So now you can see my hand, if you can see here on the back side, but I'm using the same sort of downward or slightly angled motion to bring the clay together on the inside, and you can do it up or down. You really just want to make sure that you don't see that seam so that it's really well attached. All right. So for this piece, I'm just going to work up coil by coil, and I'm going to smooth it as I go and work it into the shape that I want it to be, and and then I should be finished. Now my clay is pretty stiff. I think stiffer clay, if you have some stiff clay that you're having trouble throwing, this is really ideal, slightly stiff clay, for extruding. So I made these with the extruder. I'm going to have a separate video that shows you how to do that. It holds its shape nicely, and you can build with it fairly quickly. So I want to pinch the clay a little bit too now. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to work the clay up slightly, just kind of pinching it inward. I want to keep that angle that I was after, and I want to make sure that the clay is pretty even. So I'm using both hands. I'm gently pinching it inward, kind of controlling the shape, and you can see the shape kind of emerge there. And then I'm going to use some of my tools to kind of work that clay together to make sure that it's nice and even. All right, but you can choose to work with the coils in lots of different ways. If you want to have a lot of feeling of the touch of your hand on the clay, you can do that. You can work it kind of loosely so it feels really pinched. And there's some really interesting artists that do that kind of work. Giselle Hicks is one you might want to look up, and Emily Schroeder. They both do nice, really pinched feeling large forms. And then I'm going to take my rib and kind of smooth that clay out. And I'm really looking, here, let's see, I got a bunch of different ribs here. I like ribs. I'm going to kind of even that clay up, and I'm looking for a uniform thickness all the way up. All right. So if you are in the studio and you're feeling like your form is a little soft and you probably shouldn't add any more, but you want to keep working, you can actually go ahead and build the center of the form. You could build a middle section, and then when they were both stiff, you could put them together. To do that, you would want to take a measurement of this diameter, and I usually will just kind of wet it with a little bit of water, and then take a piece of newspaper and just print that diameter on a piece of paper. And then I lay that paper down and put my first coil there, and then work it up. It's a little tricky. You want to make sure that your transition will be smooth and you'll have the same kind of form, but you want to put it on when it's not too stiff so that you can really join them together, and if you need to reshape a little bit, you can go ahead and do that. All right, so I like to work on a banding wheel when I'm doing coil building like this. I usually work with fairly symmetrical forms, and then I will sometimes change their shapes using a paddle and a stone anvil, and I'm going to show you all how to do that as well. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to really finish the inside too. I want the inside to be nice and round. And I just kind of slowly scrape and make sure it's nicely connected here. All right, so I'll do a little time lapse and show you the piece as it grows. All right. Okay, so my coil built piece has gotten a little bit larger here, and I wanted to just check in with you to show you how you just continue building up. So I built this basically over the course of about 2 days, working not so long on it. I put a few coils on and then I let it sit for a while and then I put a few more coils on. My clay is quite stiff but soft enough that I can just easily pinch it on to connect it. I'm not worried about it being so stiff that the connections aren't going to be strong. And I'm being careful to kind of even out the walls on the inside and on the outside to kind of guide this shape. So I'm trying to make kind of a large pedestal base here. I keep my coils covered, as you can see here. Sorry, it's a little loud. On this bat here, and I score between layers using a little bit of my stick-up slip, or just, you can also just use a little bit of water. Make sure that there's a little bit of slip on there, and then really attach it. So my clay is soft enough that I know that this will be a good attachment here. The coils are a little easier to attach securely because you really pinch that clay and work it in a little more aggressively. The paddling does help when I add the bands, and I'm going to show you how I do that in just a bit here on the other large piece. So I've got just one little layer here, and each time I just kind of attach it a little bit to the inside, bringing it in, and I work on that shape at each layer, trying to make sure that it's going where I want it to go, because if I need to try to make it come in further, I really can't do that very well once it's all built up. So you really want to kind of take care to get the surface quality that you want and the thickness that you want as you go. And then when you're finished, you know, like here down at the base, it's a lot stiffer than it is up here, and that's okay. It can actually be kind of transitioning almost to being dry at the bottom while I'm still working on the top. So then I'll just kind of go and pinch, and I'm trying to move that clay inwards. I'm going to kind of bring that volume in and up as I go, and I really pinch again with my thumb. It's kind of hard to show you. You're kind of coming up at an angle to one side. I'm trying to even it out just with my thumb mostly. And then I'll go back with my ribs and kind of scrape it smooth to make sure that I have the surface quality that I want. Okay, I'll check in a little bit later when it gets a little bit larger.